All right, just a little quick video here for those of you that trial is imminently upon you. I want to give you some ammunition, all right? In a lower court, what you're trying to do is set up for the appeal. As I told you earlier, in lower courts, 98% of, or the prosecutors for the counties, on behalf of the state, if you can figure this one out, they get a 98% conviction rate, ladies and gentlemen. So, knowing that their conviction rate is at a 98%, it might behoove you, if you're going to trial by way of jury, or jury trial as they will flip it around, it may behoove you to pay attention. So, first, let's talk about the way people interact with each other. There's a lot of pronouns that are used. It, that, the, this, you is a pronoun. You really need to start learning your pronouns. When pronouns are used, people are being omissive, maybe not intentionally, it's just the way that everybody's taught to speak, or it's custom, quote unquote, for everybody to infer and interpret what people believe. And that's what makes it so easy for presumptions and assumptions to prevail, is because people aren't making full and complete sentences. They're using pronouns, and then they leave you to fill in the blank as though you're some mystical wizard in your mind. And granted, 90% of the time, maybe even 99% of the time, you're correct in your assumption and presumption as to what they're actually talking about. But if for example, I said she took the ball. You know, Jane was outside, and then it started raining, and she took the ball. Who's she? Are we still talking about Jane, or are we talking about somebody else at this point? We're three sentences in now, and all of a sudden she out of nowhere comes in. So Jane was out in the rain, or Jane was outside, then it started to rain, she took the ball. She might not necessarily be Jane. All right? So in circumstances like that, you want to pay peculiar attention to the details, because, as everybody says, the devil is in the details. So I want to run this by you. When people start out by saying, I think, I believe, I suspect, it might be, I feel, it seems, I thought, it looks as though, all of these intros into making a statement are always objection, speculation, or objection, assume facts, not in evidence. Okay? I don't need your opinion. All of these are opinion-based. When you start out a sentence going, I think, that's an opinion. I believe is a lack of knowledge. That's an opinion. I suspect, again, it's a lack of knowledge. It might be lack of knowledge. I feel, lack of knowledge, okay? It seems, that's a lack of knowledge. I thought, it's a lack of knowledge. It looks as though, lack of knowledge, all right? And it calls for an objection because of speculation. I don't want to know what you think, what you thought, what it seems to be. Tell me what you know. I know for a fact this is what I saw, okay? And on the same subject matter, you can also say objection, assume facts, not in evidence. Now, what happens if they continue to allow them? They say overruled, and they continue to allow them go. I take exception to that, to being overruled as an appealable issue. And why do you want to do that? Well, you want to establish on the record that you're appealing as an appealable issue, because what is being put on record is somebody's belief or thought, or they suspect, or it might be, which is not a fact, okay? So objection, assume facts, not in evidence comes to mind as well. And I'm sure there's some other objections. I'm just coming out here. I got things going on. The next thing I want to address, statutes. Statutes, ladies and gentlemen. They are not law. Although there are times, through presumption and assumption and silence is acquiescence, that they may become law. Okay? Which is what happened to me today, because I wasn't paying attention. So, statutes are prima facie law. They have the semblance of law. They look like law. However, with the slightest bit of scrutiny, they don't stand a snowball's hell and chance, all right? They're only presumed to be law because they're prima facie in their state. So they're presumed and assumed. And they only become law when you acquiesce to them, which reminds me of why 1 Timothy section 9 is so important. 1 Timothy section 9 says the law is not written for a righteous man. I don't know if that's how exactly to put that. You know, when I think about a righteous man, I think about somebody who's probably wise beyond his years, been through hellfire to get where he's at, and you know, he's morally sound. He understands. You know, we grow out of things. Being a young adolescent, we grow out of childish ways. So the law of the Pharisees was not written for a righteous man. The Pharisees created Roman civil statutes, okay, which have the semblance of law, or the resemblance of law, but are in fact not law. But for those that are a heathen, for those who do not know, it is the law for them. And why? Because they don't know any better. They don't know any better than to rebut and rebuke and say, no, wait a minute. That is not the law. The law is very simple. Law is so simple, ladies and gentlemen. I heard, okay, you can object to it as hearsay. It may fly, it may not. If they heard something, they're testifying as to what they heard, it may stand. But when they're like, I heard that Jane said, now is a timely manner to move forward and say, objection hearsay. I don't care what you heard from Cynthia that Susan said. That's nothing more than hearsay. Between you and Susan, Cynthia and Susan, that's firsthand knowledge. Between Jane, Susan, and Cynthia, Jane doesn't have a claim to any of that. It's hearsay coming from Jane, so it's an objection hearsay. And if you're overruled when you say objection hearsay, you know, you're going to take exception to it, to being overruled as an appealable issue. You want to make that on the record as many times as you can if you're in the lower court, and you're going to end up into a trial by way of jury or jury trial. When somebody states something on your behalf, for example, it happened to me today. Derek said his home, or Derek said my home. Derek said my house. Derek said my garage. And the situation that I was in, it wasn't really an objection. It was more of like, hey, can't allow you to muddy the waters and sit here and tell a bold-faced lie. I've never said any of that. And that's, you know, I want that stricken from the jury. And it was done. It wasn't really an appeal as much as it was based on sound doctrines and principles. You're not going to sit there and put words in my mouth. You're not going to testify for me. You don't have power of attorney, 1, to testify on my behalf, and 2, you have 0 firsthand knowledge of the way I think. And because of that, I'm not going to allow you to put words in my mouth unless you want to carry the liability of what's going on here today. No, I don't want to do that. Okay, then. I suggest that you quit saying things that you believe I would say. All right? So that's just a little quick lesson there to help you guys out. Study your pronouns. Anything pretty much that starts with T. This, that, the, it, she, her, them. They're not particular. They're not specific. And we want to be specific when we speak. And I'll go on later about proper sentence structure. And keep in mind, I dropped out of school at the age of 13, all right? I didn't go to English grammar school or anything like that. But it is imperative, if you are going to study law, to understand the law of grammar. Oh my gosh, it is imperative. I can't stress to you enough how imperative it is to learn about nouns, pronouns, adjectives, adverbs, super important, adjectives. So if you're on this journey and you're struggling, ladies and gentlemen, just a couple little pointers. We want to learn our pronouns, we want to learn our nouns, adjectives, verbs, adverbs. It's important to know how to put a sentence together properly. So, one, it actually makes sense. And two, when you run into other articulate, intelligent people, you can carry on a very, very, very poignant conversation. Okay? Some of the most intelligent people I know don't say a damn thing. They're quiet all the time. But when they speak, it's so profound. They waste not a single breath or a single ounce of energy conveying a message. And it's crisp. It's almost piercing to the ears. It's like, ooh, what'd you say? Well, you heard me. No, I just like the way you talk. Say it again so I can pick up on that language so I can continue to grow and develop myself. And just as an imperative, prepositions. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, with that said, I'm going to let you guys go. We got family over for Thanksgiving. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful Thanksgiving. I don't know if that's a pagan holiday or just some crazy cracker holiday, but nevertheless, people seem to enjoy it. Probably should do some more research on that. The other thing about studying law, go back further than what your instructor or somebody who's guiding you in the principles of law. If they're starting at 1666, if they're starting in 1871, if they're talking about 800 years ago, I can tell you with firsthand knowledge, you have to go back all the way to the beginning, ladies and gentlemen. That is where you will start to lay the foundation, or you will start to see the foundation that has already been laid, all right? And that comes from the Heavenly Father. It's divine. It's eloquent and gorgeous in all ways. I can't express it enough. So, one of the things I found interesting today is, people go, oh my gosh, you were found guilty. No, the estate was found guilty. The all caps was found guilty. The man wasn't found guilty. What was wrong with my whole scenario is the fact that I understand what's going on and the concept behind it. Now it's a matter of going, okay, I need the exemplified record for tax purposes, all right? Need to see all the accounting so we can assess the taxes here, all right? Really that simple. Just to make sure the IRS isn't being cheated, the United States Treasury isn't being cheated. I just want to be above board and make sure everybody's getting a piece of this pie. And I think that's a very important point. A lot of people that are getting into this want new cars, new houses, new toys, and some people are pulling it off. They're being taught by certain people who are teaching them how to use forms, and what those people that are teaching them how to use forms aren't telling them is, by not doing this correctly and not knowing what you're doing, in about 3 to 5 years, you're going to get a nice knock on the door from the IRS going, we want all the toys, we want all the boats, we want all the cars, we want the houses, or your ass goes to prison for life. It might not be quite that extreme, but your ass will go to prison for a while, I promise you that. I know too many people who have gone to prison by filling out forms without understanding and comprehending how they work. So just because somebody does it, I'm going to inform you of this now. I've had friends that have done some things. They have received some very sizable checks, and they have went out and lived the lavish life, and a couple years later, no shit, we're with the IRS, and we're investigating a fraud that has occurred, a false reporting, and would you know anything about that? We'd sure like to talk to you. We're getting ready to arrest you for fraud and defrauding the United States Treasury. So be warned about that. There are people out there that are teaching it proper. Everything in the commercial sector is banking. You want to get into the banking side of things? I suggest you start studying UCC 8. Okay? When you're dealing with the courts, UCC 8 is important. UCC 8 deals with securities. All right? So you might want to get a firm grasp on securities. There are dummy books out there, UCC 8 for Dummies. My law library has a plethora of knowledge in the UCC. So be mindful of that. If you're going to get into this stuff, Do not jump into the deep end of the pool just because Tommy looks like he's having a good time. Tommy might not be enjoying himself very much longer. Did you get to view your case management file? Not yet, Andrew. Let me write that down. Case management file. Appreciate that. I'm already working on the appeal, actually, as we speak. Case management file. I'm already working on the appeal as we speak. Also working on allocution. Ladies and gentlemen, if the estate has been found guilty, the all caps name, fear not, fret not, there is still the right of allocution. You don't have to stand in as surety, as surety on behalf of the principal and rot in jail. There are ways to get around that. And it's not so much about getting out of it. It's about a ascending of the mind and gaining the knowledge. Because, look, I'll be honest with you. These people are operating as though they're a judiciary, but they are actually working on behalf of the DOD and a military tribunal, utilizing the UCC under the executive branch, which means they're a private ad hoc business with zero immunity, ladies and gentlemen, zero. They have no immunity for what they're doing, okay? They're not a true judiciary. They're monetizing securities, and if you go look at UCC 8, you'll start to understand what's going on. So even the tribunal that I was at today, that is not a judicial venue. That is underneath the executive branch, not in the judicial branch, okay? And because of that, you have to understand why that happened. Ladies and gentlemen, everything got moved over to the executive branch in 1871 when they established, I'll use the word established Washington, D.C. Okay? Now, how did they establish Washington, D.C. in 1871? Maryland and Virginia seceded, I don't know if I can spell, seceded land to create Washington, D.C. Now, this is what's going to get you. Maryland and Virginia secede land, and what do you have? You have Virgin Mary. Virgin Mary. All right, from Maryland. Which I find really interesting. Everything always ties back to the Bible. Of course, this is my view on it. I'm not saying I'm 100% correct, but this is something that has come to my attention about it. And seeing how everything correlates with the Bible blows my mind. So in 1871, the new Constitution was created, and the reason for it was the bankruptcy. All right? We never won the War of 1812, and that was the War of Northern Aggression. You're not going to get this taught to you in college like this. You're not going to get this taught to you in high school like this. That was the War of Northern Aggression. And what ended up happening out of that deal was that we actually, we lost. We lost a lot of things. But what ended up coming in was the fact that, and keep in mind, what was it, 1776 is the Independence Day, right? And then it took, I don't want to quote the timeline right now, because I'm not really all there. But anyway, I want to explain this to you. 1871 established Washington, D.C., and the very definition of a constitutor is to roll debt over from one entity to another. That's the definition of a constitutor. So they took the debt from the United States of America's charter, okay, and they rolled it over into the United States constitutional charter, okay? And that's what the constitutor does. Now, what was brilliant about Abraham Lincoln is, as this was happening, Abraham Lincoln created a trust that is held in Puerto Rico. Kind of funny because the RICO violation, Puerto Rico, ha 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 ha, funny, in your face type of shit. Hebrew 4:12, the word of God is alive. 8:12, for the word of God is alive and active, sharper than any double-edged sword. Amen. It penetrates even to divide soul and spirit, joints and marrow. It judges the thoughts and attitudes. Yes, it does. Very accurate. Love that. Thanks for sharing that with me. A lie. What is Kiri Fisher? What's a lie? So then after that, what happened is Abraham Lincoln does a memorandum. I might call it a memorandum. It may not be a memorandum, but basically he felt the need to use executive power to call Congress back into order. Congress back into order, okay? And Congress comes in under the auspice of the memorandum, okay? The President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, and at that time, before he did this, he was, in fact, the President of the United States. He was the last President of the United States of America, excuse me. And Congress, under the auspice of coming back underneath his memorandum, they had the power to reconvene on their own, okay? But they chose not to, and they reconvened under Abe Lincoln's order. Abe Lincoln is the first one to create an executive order, ladies and gentlemen. Go look up the first EO, executive order, ever made, okay? And there's a reason for this. This is how you can prove this all works. Derek, I will bet there is no court-sealed application from attached to the information lay and a receipt of the filing fee to create a lawful court case. I bet you're right. I bet you're right. And I'm not a gambler. I love you, Andrew. Thank you. I will check that out. So, the first executive order is created by Abraham Lincoln. Okay? Now, Congress is reconvened underneath a memorandum, which means Congress now becomes the board of directors to the Commander-in-Chief. He is no longer the President. He is now the Commander-in-Chief of the largest standing military force the world has ever seen. When Congress did this, the judiciary remained mute. And because they remained mute, what do we know about silence, ladies and gentlemen? It equates to acquiescence. You cannot tell me a group of lawmen did not know what Abraham Lincoln was doing. He was a lawman himself. This was a plan. This was orchestrated. This was high treason, okay? They were converting everything. Now, keep in mind, I actually like the system the way it is. The more I learn, the more I grow, the more I know, and the more I enjoy it. It's very painful at first, but as you start to see it unfold, it starts to get exciting. So, then the judiciary comes underneath the same memorandum. Now, what we have created, or that blossoms from that, is we have Congress that is now under the executive branch. All right. And then we have the judiciary, or what purports to be a judiciary, operating under military tribunals, Article 1. Okay. Why? Because the executive branch is military, ladies and gentlemen. So, all three branches of the government now are underneath the executive branch. In this corporation known as Washington, D.C., it's all executive. It's all business, baby. And that is why no one has immunity. All right? They're all private, for-profit, ad hoc companies with zero immunity. None. When a government steps out its scope of authority and does business like a corporation, they can sue and be sued, and they no longer qualify for immunity, okay? Which really in law, there is no immunity. It's either right or it's wrong. You either did a thing and you need to remedy the situation, or you didn't do a thing and the accuser needs to, at least apologize to you, and hopefully they didn't slander and defame your character too much, okay? It's always best to forgive. That's a tough one. I learned that late in life. I'm glad I've got it down now. I'm still working on it to a degree. There's still times my emotions get the best of me. Now, with everybody under the executive branch, then we see the act of, and I'm going to jump ahead quite a ways. There's more stuff that you're going to be missing, and I want you to go back in history for all the people that are out there teaching this stuff. Just take this video and do a little research, and you'll find out that either the guy that's teaching you or the gal that's showing you some things either knows some things or don't know anything. In 1913, it was actually in 1910, you have the bankers meeting at Jekyll Island. Jekyll Island is land. In 1913, you have a traitorous rat bastard who sold out his country. Woodrow Wilson. Okay? Let's see my little drawings over here. Woodrow Wilson. Now, before he died, he said, "I single-handedly destroyed the country I love so much." Now, that's just hearsay. Okay, I read it in a book. Sounded pretty good. They allege that it's from him, but who the hell knows? It's not certified. It's not verifiable. Although it's published, as Amicus says, who can really prove anything? The only thing that can ever be proven is spirituality. Faith. Faith is provable. Okay, everything else is not. And I found that really interesting. I'm still struggling with it, but eventually I will wrap my head around what he's talking about. Faith is the one thing that can be proven. And what's interesting about that is when you read the Bible, it says just the faith of a mustard seed can move a mountain, right? So 1910, Jekyll Island occurs, bankers meet up. 1913, Theodore Roosevelt sells out the nation to the bankster paradise, okay? Then in 1933, was it Theodore Roosevelt? Son of a gun. No, in 1913, the Federal Reserve Banking Act was enacted. Everybody thinks that it was enacted in 1933, but it was actually in 1913, I believe. 1913. Who was the president in 1913? Was it Teddy Roosevelt or Theodore Roosevelt? Woodrow Wilson. There we go. Woodrow Wilson sold the nation out, all right? And then what ended up happening was the Federal Reserve Act gets passed, okay? Let me go through this real quick just to make sure. Yeah, which American president created? Yep. The Federal Reserve Act was created in 1913, all right? And then here's the thing. This is what they do. This is their little Jesuitical trick to keep you distracted. They'll do something like pass, for example, in 2008, they passed a deal about genetic modifications. That was in 2008, okay? It got passed. Nobody talks about it because at the time, it wasn't relevant. It wasn't affecting the general populace. Nobody really gave a shit, right? Okay, and the people who were paying attention in 2008, screaming and bellowing at the top of their lungs, were saying they're getting ready to plan mass vaccinations for everybody around the world. And people go, you're a conspiracy nut. What evidence do you have? Well, they passed this bill. Oh, shit, they'd never do that. They passed it. They gave us notice. They told us what they're going to do. Here we are in 2021. What the hell are they doing? Exactly what they told us they were going to do. So, from 2008 to 2021, it just becomes customary. It's not necessarily the law, but you all were well informed, or should have been at least, per se, okay? Because, well, didn't you know it was passed in 2008? It's been on record since 2008. What do you mean you don't understand or comprehend how it's the law now? And when you argue, well, it's not law, you may have passed it, but it's not law. Well, it's prima facie law, and if everybody else accepts it, it becomes customary. And then when you have a jury of 12, good luck. Good luck. Whew, what a tough cookie. Tough crowd. But some of that's on my end. In fact, a good portion of it is on my end. I could have corrected that, should have corrected that, didn't catch it in time. Was a little frazzled and brain thinking elsewhere. So, anyway, with that said, then you got the passage of 1933, where they start to remove the gold and silver from persons. Not man, persons. If you were a man and knew what you were doing, you could keep your gold and silver. You couldn't keep your double eagles, but you could keep your gold and silver because it only applied to persons. But nobody was thinking like that back then. They were reading the paper. Person means everybody. So then in 1935, what happens because of the Act of 1933? In 1935, the judiciary changes the way it does business. Okay? Because of the banking. All right? So in 1935, the difference between anything prior to 1935, you will see a lot of equitable rulings. You will see a different judiciary altogether if you go back and read case law back before 1935. After 1935, it all changed because of the administration of the bankruptcy. And remember, the judiciary was underneath the Article 1 executive branch and the military control since 1871 under the memorandum with the first executive order issued, okay? So now it's custom. It's been there for a minute. They're fine-tuning it. They're tweaking it a little here, tweaking it a little there, and a little bit more here, and a little bit more there, and presto, oh, but there's always room for improvements, right? We're always evolving. We're always growing. Systems, technology, and everything else always advancing. And unfortunately for us, the common folk, we don't have access to all the new crafty little stuff that's coming up. But they know what's coming up, so they're already improvising and critiquing and molding how they're going to manipulate the society structurally to fit their little mold so they can continue to loot, plunder, steal from everybody. But most of that we're to blame for because we're asleep at the wheel. So you will hear a lot of justices of the peace in the lower courts say, if you bring me a court case after 1935 that supports your case, I'll honor it. Well, there's a reason for that. Because something happened in the judiciary in 1935, okay? So if you'll find a case that's similar in nature, I'll agree with it, I'll honor it, and we'll go from there. Remember, just because the case is after 1935, I want you to remember this maxim. Dissimilar things should not be joined. Dissimilar things should not be joined. Okay, but here's a key word in that maxim. All right, a lot of people like to hang on to maxims, and this is one of the maxims that can actually be challenged. And here's why. The word should. The word should is not mandatory. Okay? So when I first started quoting this maxim, I said dissimilar things should not be joined, and they go, yep, you're right about that. Okay, so we're going to move on. And I'm going, what? Wait. No, you had your chance. We're moving on. Damn it, all right. And then I let go of it, and you shouldn't. You should hang on to it and correct it. And how do you correct it? Dissimilar things should not be joined. Why? Because similar is not same. There's your catch-all. Two maxims. Similar is not same, and dissimilar things should not be joined. So similar is not same, and dissimilar things should not be joined. For example, the all caps name is not your Christian appellation, and dissimilar things should not be joined. Although they're similar, they're not the same. And then you also have the doctrine of idiom sonum. The doctrine of idiom sonum. Under the doctrine of idiom sonum, if they look the same, they sound the same, then they must be the same. Must is a very powerful word. It's an obligatory word. It creates and compels the performance of an obligation. Okay? So the doctrine of idiom sonum, under the presumptions and assumptions, under the doctrine of idiom sonum, they go, it looks the same, it sounds the same, therefore it must be the same. Okay? But you're going to rebut and rebuke that because dissimilar things should not be joined and similar is not same. Okay? So those help you out in that instance after 1935. That's why I always know on people that refer to a case known as Trezevant versus the city of Tampa Bay, Florida. Okay? Although your cause of action may be the same or similar to it, what led up to it most certainly will not be. Okay? So similar is not same. Although it's similar, it's not same. Then we fast forward to, let's say, where do we want to go from there? Let's visit 1971 when I probably should have been born. Should have been born in the 60s. That way in the 70s I could have enjoyed all those cool cars. Yeah, it's kind of the shits being born in the wrong generation, but what the hell. 1971, we have the removal of gold-backed currency. All right? And with that comes the petrodollar. Petrodollar. For all intents and purposes, this is what the Federal Reserve notes are backed by. Okay? And what's important is, look it up. Was it Nixon? 71? I think it's Nixon. And thank you. 1971, we got the removal of the gold-backed fiat, because it wasn't the dollar anymore, it was fiat at that point.
You're right.
I was right again. My brain's still there. I'm going to be really sad when I get short-timers and part-timers and all-timers and the shakes. And it's going to be such a shitty deal. I want to be put out of my misery like a lame horse when that happens. I don't want to go through that shit. If I can't ever wipe my own ass, put me out. I'm done. So, Federal Reserve notes, 1971, the petrodollar comes in under Nixon's authority. Nixon, genius little thing he was, goes over to Saudi Arabia, ladies and gentlemen, and turns around and strikes a deal with the Twisted Sisters. I think they're calling the seven sisters. It's basically all the oil regimes, Enron and all that stuff. But in 71, what they actually did was they went over to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia? I think it was Saudi Arabia. I'm surprised I can cram all this shit in my head and still remember
I'm
it.
impressed.
Like, I could go for days and days and days, but I don't want to lead them wrong. Sometimes I get my dates mixed up. And every now and again, I throw the wrong president in there. I almost threw Theodore Roosevelt in there. That was the wrong guy. Wrong guy. Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah.
Yes. So, it was the Saudi Arabians. And he went over there and he told them, look, you can't sell. Here's the deal. We will supply you, as the largest military force in the world, we will supply you with arms, ammunition, and show you how to use it. So long as you never sell a single freaking barrel of oil with anything other than the Federal Reserve note. Saudi Arabia said, shit, we could use some badass planes. We could use some training. Oh, yeah, we could use that free ammunition. Tell you what, we agree. We will sell our oil with the Federal Reserve note. Now, you have the creation of the petrodollar, okay? That is what has backed the Federal Reserve note for so fucking long. People think that it's not backed by anything. I'm not saying that it's not an instrument of debt. It absolutely, by definition, is an instrument of debt. What I am saying is it is also backed by a contract with other nations for their oil, which is why if we fast forward, Hillary Clinton goes, we came, we saw, we killed him. Like a little crazy psycho chick that she is, all right? The reason they wanted to kill Gaddafi was because he was getting together with China and Russia and going to create a gold dinar, all right? And start buying oil with gold. And that would have disrupted the Federal Reserve note and quite frankly would have fucked a lot of countries. Because the Federal Reserve note predominantly is the nation's currency, not just the nation's currency, an international form of currency, okay? That's why Gaddafi got whacked. If you do some research on Gaddafi and Libya, people there, I'm not saying Gaddafi was a good man. I didn't know him personally. Ran around with a hot little entourage that he had that was badass psycho killers. I don't know how he slept at night because I don't understand that shit. Anyway, Gaddafi gets whacked. Then we have $21 trillion. And now my timeline's going to get screwed because I'm jumping around. You have $21 trillion that comes up missing from the Pentagon. $21 trillion happens to also be thereabouts the national debt at that time. So how is it supposedly the national debt's at 21 trillion, yet the Pentagon loses 21 trillion? Where the hell did that 21 trillion come from, ladies and gentlemen, right? Then you have the falling of Building 7 with all the evidence, kapoof, gone. Then you have the Twin Towers, largest bank heist the world has ever seen, free fall. You can listen to Tom Petty, it explains the whole thing, free balling, free falling, all right? My point to all this is that what they are doing is all under the executive branch, but what they created does not replace what already existed. So what I just described to you is the public side. Public side. Sorry, I got family over here for Thanksgiving. Public side, and then on the private side, you still have your private core judicial rights. Private core judicial rights. You have the exclusive jurisdiction of equity that is wholly untouched. How do we know that? Gibson, Pomeroy affirm it, all right, that it is wholly untouched. I was just in South Carolina. It's in their constitution. That's really neat. There's Tennessee, obviously, where Henry R. Gibson comes from. Big into equity. Anyway, that's just a little bit of the history of the Federal Reserve note. The IMF, we can get into the IMF. I'm not exactly sure on the date that the IMF got started, okay? But what I will tell you is the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, does create the Social Security number. The Social Security Administration Office administers those numbers on behalf of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, okay? So later, got all these drawings going on here. I feel like a little kid again. My old brain's working, the old tickers are just going. This was supposed to be a short video. Later on, I'll explain to you the IMF, the IRS, and how this little funnel of pump and dump works so they can push it into the economy and suck it back out. Push it into the economy and kind of get this ebb and flow system going with these ones and zeros on a computer screen to hyperinflate or deflate the economy to get society to move just like they want them to, okay? And for the most part, they want you broke, they want you in debt, and they want you thinking that there's no hope. And then you'll turn to dope, and then they can profit from you being in prison because you don't understand what they're actually doing to you. That's really what's going on here. They're siphoning off your sweat equity and at a phenomenal rate. If the real numbers were out there as to how much currency or credits on account or permissible units actually exist, I think it would blow people's minds. 21 trillion is a drop in the fucking bucket. I promise you that. And I'm not an accountant. They want you begging, sure. But as I learn more about the system, I'm really starting to like it, and you'll understand why in another video. Because through trials and tribulations, you start to appreciate things, okay? There is a need for the system in play. And you go, well, shit, Derek, I'm learning and I don't think it's right. I didn't say that necessarily the system is always correct. What I said is there's a need for it. And why is there a need for it? There are villainous little heathens out there that do need their asses put in place once in a while. And unfortunately, there aren't enough alert people in the communities being vigilant because they rely on the forces that be. Those forces actually work on behalf of the bankers. If you follow me for just a moment longer, everything is under the executive branch after 1871. And that means that your LEOs, law enforcement officers, who at one point were your peace officers who carried peacemakers, now they're policy enforcers called police officers, okay? They're paid to protect the public. What is the public? The public is Washington, D.C., its territories, and its possessions. What does it possess? It possesses an executive branch, a judicial branch, and a legislative branch, ladies and gentlemen. And it overlays completely over our land. That's how this system works. And it is a complete fiction. Police officer in cruiser patrolling the holy commercial sea, and that's exactly why you see islands in the middle of the road. Islands and lanes, and they're driving their cruisers. They're cruising in their shipping lanes, and the islands that part the shipping lanes. That stuff's all real. It's all very real and very, 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 very poignant. So anyway, with that said, I hope this helped you out. I started out with just wanting to talk about I think, I believe, I suspect, it might be, I feel, it seems, I thought, it looks as though. Those are all objection, speculation, objection, assume facts, not in evidence. Anytime that comes up, statutes are nothing more than prima facie and don't actually become law until your silence becomes acquiescence by tacit agreement and you agree that that's the law that should govern you, okay? I heard from Cindy Lou, who told me that Tanya said something. Objection hearsay. They get, if it's not directly from Cindy Lou and they go on to, Tanya or whatever, it's hearsay at that point. Object. Don't let that shit get on the record. It will muddy the waters. When someone states something on your behalf, such as, I feel Derek would agree with this. Object immediately. All right, you didn't grant them permission to testify on your behalf. They can testify on their own behalf. You have the knowledge and the understanding to speak for yourself. Don't let other people speak for you. Anytime you're overruled in an objection, take exception to it, to being overruled as an appealable issue. I take exception to it as an appealable issue. I take exception to your ruling as an appealable issue. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thanks for joining me, guys. Just want to chit-chat with you a little bit. Kind of got off track, started talking about the whole monetary system, because after today, that's all I'm thinking about is the banking aspect of it. Because of the judiciary, or what proclaims to be the judiciary, is really an ad hoc private for-profit corporation operating under the guise of being the judiciary, but in all actuality they're working under the Article 1. And what should strike you out about that is, or at least be drawn to your attention, is who actually runs and controls the currency. Think about that. Did you know the Federal Reserve note is military script? How many of you guys knew that? Derek Gonzalez, Thought you tried to make payment for taxes at DMV and you got denied. Yeah, well, they didn't make that an issue today, and I got burned on it in closing, which sucked. I got burned on it in closing. I had attempted that, buddy. I did. Isn't that payment satisfied? Yes, it is. However, I didn't get that on the record today because that never became an issue, and when I testified, I forgot about that. So, you bring up another good point. Some of my most wonderful mentors, okay, taught me a little secret back in the day, and I don't exercise it as much as I should. In fact, hardly at all anymore, except for when I'm studying the law. I seem to do it a lot. It is taking and making a journal entry every day of what you did to the best of your ability, to the best of your knowledge, and as you train your brain to do this, it'll start doing it on its own, but you still want to write it down. And you will get better and better and better about being able to articulate the time, the date, and what you did. The time, the date, and what you did. And start with like 8 a.m., noon, and 6 o'clock when you first get started. Make your journal entries or whatever. So you can catalog your day so you know what's going on. And by doing that, if you make a mistake, you can go back and reflect on that mistake, and you may be able to provide remedy for that mistake so you ensure you never do it again. Or if you had a really successful day and you're having a really shitty day 2 weeks later, you might be able to go back and reflect on that very successful day and realize what it was in that day that made it so impactful and what you learned the most from it, and turn around and utilize that information during your shitty day. It sounds really chick-like to make a journal. When I was first told, Derek, you want to be successful? You got to learn how to love to write. And I go, what? Oh, I hate fucking writing. Hell, I can barely spell my name. Are you kidding me? He goes, yeah, I know. I've seen some of your writings. They suck. But he goes, your handwriting's nice, though. Well, thank you. He says, well, that should give you some incentive. You got pretty handwriting. Maybe take some interest in calligraphy. It's slow, and you can learn how to spell that way. I will be really honest. The advent of technology has helped me tremendously in spelling. I have to ask my phone all kinds of shit how to spell it, especially when I start dealing with Latin and Hebrew and everything else. I'll point out today that when I got out on the witness stand, I was already sworn in, but when I got on the witness stand the day before, I testified to the fact when I swore in, when they said, what is your name, stated for the record, and I said, Derek Satan Ben of Jose. And nobody has made an issue of that at all. Nobody, not one. And I know that somebody caught what I said, showing the distinction between myself and the defendant. Anyway, I'll have to get a copy of that record. That way that might be part of the, not so much appeal, but the claim of beneficiary to the estate. Hey, yeah, Derek Satan Ben of Jose. If you guys can use Latin and French, I can use Hebrew, because Ben means son. So anyway, with that, now talking about Ben, now I want to talk about the W8BEN, but we don't have time for that this evening. I got family in town. W8BEN. Write it down. And then go do your research on it so we can have an articulate conversation. Felonies, they're trying to get you for how you can get... Thought you tried to make payment for taxes at DMV. Yeah, we already been through that. How can you get a felony for something satisfied? That is true. It has already been paid. Now it's a matter of proving it. Well, how are we going to prove it? I called down there immediately after this was done. They had the orders written up, and I want the exemplified record. The exemplified record has the upraised seals, tells me who's responsible for the accounting. Because those sigils, those seals, not everybody's got them. They're kind of like medallion stamps, if you will. Certain individuals within the judiciary have certain powers, abracadabra power, make shit poof into existence with nothing more than a stamp and a signature. So I want the exemplified record now that the estate, Derek Gonzalez, the estate, has been found guilty. Now I want to track and source those funds and those resources. I'm not saying necessarily they're mine, but I am am obligated to report it to the IRS, any financial securities transactions, or unsecured securities that haven't been reported yet, or 1099-Rs, or Form 56 or Form 56F. So, anyway, there's a Federal Reserve form. Oh, I forgot what number the Federal Reserve form is, but every court case is required to have a specific Federal Reserve form. But anyway, I'll get back to you guys later. Love you guys. I got to get back to work. Working on appeal, doing some other things. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving.